teachers of Reddit who have had students become millionaires. What were they like in your classroom? I don't know if this counts, but recently the father of one of my students won $1 million off a scratch ticket. This was a family living paycheck to paycheck and often spent their summers living at campsites because it's cheaper than rent. Oftentimes his only real meal was the free lunch he got at the cafeteria. His dad is using the money to buy a house, and since they won, my student has been way more focused, has turning in his work, and just seems so much happier. My mom went to school with Queen Latifah. She supposedly came into the gym and rapped some days. I'm an economics teacher in high school and I've had two of which I know. One was always a computer data type of boy, nerdy on one hand, but he had quite a big mouth on him. Became some data expert at an investment bank. The other boy was more of the entrepreneurial, no idea if that is an English word type. He started a recruiting business for high-tech companies which became pretty large. That boy is annoying as frick to deal with as a teacher. Way too smart for his class, therefore bored, therefore an absolute little monster. Not unfriendly though. My mom's friend's husband taught Steve Jobs. He was apparently very arrogant and a huge douche. A complete a-hole who actually was referred to school psychiatrist on suspicion of sociopathy. Fast forward about 7 years, and he has run what amounts to a pyramid scheme, scamming about $6 million of mostly elderly. Only had to repay some of it, including court expenses of his accusers, because he had acted in good faith. Still cannot figure this out, but good faith is not a word I believe the student knows. Jeff Bezos was in my mom's high school graduating class. He was valedictorian. She didn't really have anything else remarkable to say about him. I met an old lady who worked at a bank Bill Gates' mom ran. Said this Bill Gates kid would come in and mess with our big computer and no one would say anything because his mom ran the place more or less. Went to school with an absolute genius. Super nice and down to earth. And we all knew he was bound for greatness in curing cancer or something like that. Sure enough, he's loaded and has his own biomedical research team. Great guy. The world is a better place with him in it. We recently had a school reunion, and I was bummed that he couldn't be there. You sound like a great person too. The way you describe him and talk about him like that, you don't seem close to him, but you are talking about him in a nice and admirative kind of way. Good for you for being able to recognize the greatness in the word. The world is surely a better place with you in it too. Not a teacher, but my elementary school buddy is now retired, and we are only in our mid-30s. He's a multimillionaire. He was the stereotypical school nerd. Fat speech impediment, D, etc. And didn't bother anyone and no one really cared or bothered him. Never went to school dances / prom during our high school and college days. He didn't go out. Just kept his nose in the books. Grinned and he knew what major he wanted and knew what company he wanted to work for. In the finance world, there's the big three that dominated. As soon as he graduated, he got his dream job at one of the big three. By age 25, he was already a senior analyst for the company. Loads of older generation of people within the company did not like him at all due to his age. Fast forward to now, has super fit / buff, retired from working, paid off his parents' home, his sister's home, and his own home, and travels the world. His Instagram posts are of him at all parts of the world with his GF. Overall, has still the nerdy kid, just loaded. I went to school with a girl who is now a multi-millionaire with her own makeup range. She was a bully. Everyone hated her. She was so nasty to everyone around her, including teachers, but now everyone's falling over themselves to tell her how amazing she is. I still don't like her. I refuse to buy her products. There's no way I'm putting my money in her pockets after everything she did to us all. Edit. Sorry, I won't ever name who it is. She is a legit businesswoman who has worked her way up from the bottom. As much as I don't like her, I wouldn't do that to her. A childhood friend from around the corner and her brother are now worth around 70 million. Plus she won a gold medal at the Commonwealth Games. We had great fun climbing trees as kids. I'm a teacher now, but I went to high school with Heath Ledger. He was a few years above me. He was already in TV shows and commercials when we were at school, so we as juniors already thought he was super cool. I remember he was charming, affable and popular, but also a really lovely guy. One time I was at an end of season rowing party held by the seniors. I was younger than all of them, but rowed in our second date, so I scored an invite. I got far too drunk and ended up put under some bushes in the front yard. On his way out with his GF he stopped and checked on me. When he realized I was a boarder he knew it'd be toast if I didn't get back by morning. So he and his GF took me in her car back to school. Such a great bloke. So sad to hear how it all ended up. Not a teacher/student post, but I went to high school with a former Major League Baseball player and current manager. He was a senior when I was a freshman. He was a pretty cool guy and would sometimes play intramural softball with us on Fridays after school. Didn't seem like an ass or anything. I saw him some years later at a local event and got his autograph while briefly discussing our old high school. Still very down to earth and personable. My future college roommate also played Little League with him. I eventually came to find out. Small world. I went to school with a boy who was typical of my redneck area. He was mouthy, bossy, cold and sit still. Talked constantly, liked trucks etc. He was quite disruptive in the classroom. He is now a very rich man. Still lives here part-time. I never see him, but I do hear his ridiculous car from time to time that he has to drive in low gear due to speed limits. That's how I know he is here for a visit. No one really knows how he got so rich. I expect he talked his way into it somehow. I taught a future NFL player. He was built like a brick shithouse, was extraordinarily polite, kind, and thoughtful. He'd sit with the lonely kid at lunch. He was never late. In fact, he was always early. Straight as. He was determined to be the best. Good looking, well spoken, every parent's dream. If anything, he was very CCKY, but he could be because he was the best at everything he did. It literally annoyed me that he was so perfect. He went on to be drafted by the Patriots. He won 2 Super Bowls with them. Has still built like a brick shithouse. He married a gorgeous woman. Has a beautiful family, made boatloads of cash, retired from the NFL, and now runs charities. Has one the kindest, sharpest guys I've ever met. Still annoys me. I worked with Drake's kindergarten teacher. Apparently he was a little shoot. JoJo was in my homeroom in junior high. Her locker was actually next to mine as well. We all knew she was talented. She wasn't popular though. She definitely wasn't regarded as one of the pretty/hot ones either. She did seem a bit pompous though. In Ontario, Canada, we apparently have an underground city near our nation's largest airbase, CFB Trenton. I believe it was made in Diefenbacher era, when nuclear weapons were a plausible risk. Maybe someone else could chime in that has more info. A couple of things. The vast majority of millionaires are not publicly known as such, and for that reason very few teachers would actually know which of their students ever became one. Being a millionaire today is not what being a millionaire was 30 years ago. They are everywhere, and are far from the jet-setting stereotypes we like to think of them as. One of my math professors last year said that she went to high school with Billy Ray Cyrus. He would play in bars and invite kids from school to list. Apparently he was a great dude and had the mullet even back th. My aunt dated him for a bit way before Achi Breaky Heart. Dude was solid, even being a broke musician. He took me and my cousins to Kings Island. Founder of YouTube went to a high school I had friends at about 15 minutes south from here. Said he was nice, but didn't know him well. My friend's dad taught Romeo Langford rookie shooting guard for the Boston Celtics. He was a great student. Not really what's being asked, but I went to school with Matthew McConaughey. It was middle school, so I don't really remember much, and was never really friends with him. But I do remember he definitely wasn't the stereotypical cool kid. He had his friend group, but mostly kept to himself. He was definitely the kid to slip under the radar. I would never have expected him to be as popular as he is. I'm not a teacher, but I went to school with a current NLA. He's definitely a millionaire now. He was rarely actually in class. Most of the time he was out training, and when he was in class he always cheated on tests. He was one of my good friends until he did something really stupid that would have got him expelled. Luckily I had a pristine academic record and took the fall for him. I just ended up getting 2 weeks of detention for it. Truth is I was in love with him and just didn't want him to fail. Didn't even get so much as a thank you from him. Every time I see him play I smile though. He probably doesn't even remember my name. I don't know if he ended up a millionaire, but if anyone I went to school with could have, it would have been my buddy. After graduation, he got a PhD in biomedical engineering, and when he got bored with that, started a chain of BBQ restaurants. He was one of the nicest kids that I hung out with, and to be honest, I never knew how brilliant he was. He was definitely more of a listener than a talker. The kid was in high school. He slept from 7 AM when the class started up until 11:55. Then he had his lunch alone in the corner and continued sleeping until 16:30 when class is over. He had no friends, no nothing. Not a single person including his parents knew how he still got above 90% in all subjects. His parents claimed that he also spent his time sleeping at home. I asked him once and this was what he said almost exactly. I have no goals, no passion, nothing excites me. I know so little, and yet I don't want to know more. I can get what I need when I need them. Life is simply a game, and if you don't skip the tutorials it seems I is truly living on autopilot. Even zombie-like. His face was so expressionless, but it's not painful, more like has in peace with himself. Like he understand life itself. Nevertheless, I managed to give him goals by the end of second year, and boy oh boy did that guy learn fast. He finished 4 years worth of college books and study guide in 5 subjects within 6 months with all the practice and exam samples. Then he built companies from ground up. I met him again a couple of years ago. He said he isn't working anymore. He sleep all day and do nothing literally. He thanked me for the goals and left. The goal was to make enough money for him to do nothing for the rest of his life, and he got it. He was 30. I may have stumbled upon a genius. A genius who thinks that life isn't worth the hassle. I had Lance Lim. I also had Greg Oden when I was student teaching. I didn't have Gordon Hayward in any of my classes, but I was friendly with him as he was in my co-worker's class and we would chat often. Lance was not pleasant. He was often absent, and he knew he was going to pitch in MLB. He didn't turn much in. I think he dropped my class after the first semester. I had Greg when he was a freshman. He was quiet, studious, and respectful. Gordon was high achieving and a model student. He was outgoing and easy to be around. He was also an amazing tennis player. Not a teacher, but went to high school with a guy that became a very successful Elvis impersonator. Does that count? Edit. Forgot to actually answer the question. He was one of the smartest, most well-mannered guys of our class. He was nice to everyone, not just the popular people he was surrounded by. He was a great performer and worked very hard at everything he did. Just because he knew from a young age that's what he wanted to do in life didn't stop him from succeeding in his education. They are not millionaires yet, but I go to school with Charlie and Dixie D'Amelio. They are surprisingly quiet and sweet people, and their anonymity is well respected in school. Had a teacher who taught Tree Parker. Said he always came to class stoned. One day Tree went to his car on break and came back soaking wet and smelling like death. Apparently he spilled God knows how old barn water on himself and was too high to notice. Or so the story went, but I really hope it's true. Not a teacher. My junior year of high school, my locker was right next to this girl who always wore stupid knee-high socks with short skirts. She had horribly bleached blonde hair and a funny nose. Normally I wasn't such a jerk about physical appearances, but her nose was always up in the air and she seemed to have an undeserved sense of self-importance. A few years later I saw her on TV. After she married Hugh Hefner. She hadn't changed. She was still wearing those stupid socks. Not famous yet, but one of my classmates a gold medalist junior Olympic boxer, so I'll save this post and reply in a few years. Edit. Malachi Ross, if you were wondering. Edit 2. He's actually my desk mate and I ran cross country with him last year. My mom's boyfriend went to high school with Bill Fagerback, voice of Patrick on SpongeBob. Not only was he a pretty good athlete, but, according to my mom's boyfriend, was super nice to everyone. He was an everyman's man. What mom's BF says. I went to high school with a guy who is now a famous singer. I'm not sure if a millionaire, but pretty well off for sure. Funny thing is that I would never expected him becoming a musician. I had never ever heard him sing, play any instrument, or talk about music more than normal during our student years. A friend of mine went to high school with Pitbull. He told me during gym/pair class Pitbull would hardly ever dress up and participate. Instead he would freestyle rap with a few friends. I guess it paid off for him in the long run. Pedantic answer first. I'm sure I've had lots of students become millionaires. Being worth $1M plus these days doesn't mean a mansion, a yacht, and a private jet. Plenty of people get there before they're old with incomes that are not in the top 1-2% and live comfortable and unremarkable lives. The currently richest one I know of has in tech, was a smart hard-working student, not near the top of his class, but well above average. Nice enough guy, if a bit overconfident about his level of talent. He was from a rich family and had the resources and connections to turn his ideas into reality successfully at a young age. Nope, I've spent my career teaching low-income and disadvantaged kids. My students are starting off pretty far behind the average student in America. Full-time employment feels like a win. My mother is a high school English teacher, and she was telling me about a past student of hers the other day. His name was Ryan, and he was always on his phone. Everyone is on their phone a lot, but this kid was to the point where it was normal to kick him out of the class for not paying attention. Well, in 2017 he dropped out when Bitcoin hit its peak and now has $3 billion. Allegedly he had been in the Bitcoin game since 2012. He is now living comfortably in the Cayman Islands.